escalates, stop sending weapons to the Israeli military to actively execute this genocide. And then, of course, our work underneath that is to uproot the root causes that cause the source of violence for all people and drive forward to a future of peace and safety for all that is grounded in justice and freedom and equality, which is still the only option. But we know that that is only possible if we act now with everything in our power. So let's start now.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for that, Stephanie. My name is Beth Miller. I'm the political director with JVP Action, which is our political and advocacy arm. And we're now going to move into action, like Stephanie said. I'm coming to you all from a pretty angry place right now. That's where I'm speaking to you all from. I've spent the last few days on the phone with offices in DC, and what I'm here to tell you is that it has never been more important that you reach out to your elected officials right now. And before anyone puts in the chat that it doesn't matter, I'm going to stop you right there, and I'm going to say, yes, it does. DC is not hearing from us right now. And they are actively supporting Israel as it plans mass atrocities and a genocide in Palestine. The statements coming out of the Israeli government right now have never been more clear and more blatant about what they are going to do. And Biden is saying that he will stand with them, support them, send them more weapons. Right now, for a member of Congress to call for a ceasefire is a controversial thing. For them to call for de-escalation is considered a controversial thing. And that's because the rhetoric in this country right now has skyrocketed to a place of total war and hatred and racism and vitriol. And we know where that leads. So it's critical that we flood their offices saying what we want, and in fact, what we demand is immediate de-escalation. And that includes not fueling violence by sending more weapons to the Israeli government when they are openly declaring their intent to use those weapons to commit war crimes against Palestinians in Gaza. And we need our members of Congress to realize that there is not a military solution here. We have to address the root causes. That's apartheid and that's occupation. But right now, the most important thing is de-escalation, ceasefire, no weapons. That's what matters. I don't care who your member of Congress is. I don't care if it's Chuck Schumer. I don't care if it's Josh Gottheimer. I don't care if it's Lindsey Graham. I don't care. They need to hear from you right now. So we're going to put a link in the chat. That's going to be a way for you to call both of your senators and your one representative. We need to flood them. And when you're done, we're going to ask you to send it to people you know and share it as far and wide as you possibly can. This is not the only thing we're doing. It's not that calling Congress is going to change all of this, but what needs to happen is that we need to be changing the conversation right now to make it clear to our members of Congress that there is an overwhelming desire amongst their own electorate to not go to war and not support the Israeli government in committing genocide against Palestinians in Gaza. So let's keep putting that link in the chat, and we're going to give you like 6 minutes now to go through and call. We've got a lot of people on this call right now, so that dialer may take some time. Be patient with it. Try again if it's not working for you. Thank you.
I'm seeing lots of people on the phone. This is exactly what we want to be seeing right now. If you are having trouble with the link, you can try again after this call, or you can just Google your office's number right now and call them without the link. It looks like we are calling so much, we may be actually overwhelming the dialer. Good job, folks. Way to flood the lines. If you are not able to get a call through right now, what we'd ask is at the moment this power hour is over, you just get back on the phone. We can do this all day, every hour. For those on the phone, just keep on calling.
Thanks, everyone. Some of you may still be on the call. Thank you all for doing that. Keep it up. I know the dialer was overwhelmed, which is a great thing. That's phenomenal. Thank you all. I'll just say that, wow, we just made 2,107 calls today. Keep it up. My advice to you all is that you call constantly. I wouldn't always say this, but it needs to be that we are calling, like, you can call multiple times a day. Don't say the exact same script every time. Be honest, be real, be passionate. They need to hear from you constantly because they are hearing from the other side constantly. Thank you all.
It is really encouraging to see this waterfall of a chat of everyone saying you are calling. That is fantastic. Get that call tool out far and wide. Send it to any organization you're a part of, your family members, anyone. Okay, we're going to go to our second action. And I'm just going to say now we are going to go over a half an hour, and that's okay because we are here in a very pressing, dire situation. So if you need to leave at the half hour, feel free, and otherwise stay with us for probably an extra 10 minutes. You might have noticed we did begin live streaming, and that's because we are 1,000 people now, and we want to make sure that others can get these actions too. So for our second action of this power hour, one of the most important things each of us can do is go have the hard conversations with people in our lives right now. Our workplaces, our organizations that are writing statements, our synagogues, our communal institutions that have influence, our families, especially we need to have the hard conversations with anyone who has some kind of influence right now. Now, we all know these conversations are very hard, but especially as a Jewish organization, we take this responsibility to reckon with the communities from which we came very seriously. We are 1,000 people right now. If each of us goes out and makes these interventions, we actually do have power. So next, we're going to go to our wonderful member leaders, Morgan Basikis and Jay Saper, first for guidance on how to have these critical conversations right now, and then for talking points and instructions about how we make critical interventions in the media narrative.
Hi, everybody. I am incredibly heartened to be here together in this really horrifying moment, really profoundly horrifying. I can't imagine not having space to take action together. To be with these horrors and this unfolding nightmare alone would be unbearable. So to be together, to be taking action, to me, makes it bearable. And so I'm really grateful that we can be together. And as Elena said, this really important action that we can do is to be vocal and visible and in our commitment to not weaponizing grief into calls for mass death. We can be vocal and visible in our commitment to saying we have to stop this imminent genocide in Gaza. We can be vocal and visible in our commitment to say every single person, including Palestinians, deserve to be free and safe and live with dignity. And it's really important for us in this moment to know that we don't need to do this perfectly, and we do not need to have all the answers, and we do not need to win and be right in every conversation. What we need to do is lead with our heart and our values in justice and collective liberation, in the preciousness of life, in our own histories, which informs us that we know what happens when people don't speak up, when there is propaganda, dehumanizing an oppressed population. We know, excuse me for the sounds, we know what happens when the war drum is being beat. We know what happens in climates in which war and Islamophobia and racism are being stoked. And so what we're going to do is share a few tips on having these conversations. The most important one is that you do not need to do it perfectly to do it. You do not need to have the right words and the right talking points to say, we must do everything in our power to prevent this imminent genocide in Gaza. We are putting some talking points in the chat for you to use and adapt and make your own. And most importantly, you can trust your heart, that your heart says, we know that we cannot allow grief to be weaponized into calls for mass death. And for those of us who are Jewish, and we welcome everyone who is on this call, regardless of who you are, but for those of us who are Jewish, it's very important that we be loud and visible as Jews and say, as Jews, we oppose this impending genocide in Gaza. We oppose this ongoing horrors being wrought on the Palestinian people. We refuse to let the death of Jewish people, of Israeli people, be used to justify the death of Palestinians. It's very important for us to be loud and proud and unapologetic in our love for all people here. We can share in these conversations how we've changed. We can share our own personal story. None of us are born with the politics we have. We can share our own journey. We can empathize with where people are coming from. We don't need to change their feelings. We don't need to change our own feelings. We don't need to resolve all of our feelings and complexities to have conversations and to take a stand against genocide. We do not need to resolve our feelings or other people's feelings. We can take a stand against genocide. We can invite people to call Congress to come to these meetings, to be conscious of not posting racist propaganda. We can make critical interventions to stop this escalating, accelerating nightmare. I love you all. I love you all deeply. We are in this together. I'm going to pass it over to Jay to talk about getting this message out into the media.
Thank you so much, Morgan, for so passionately sharing why we need to be having these conversations. So I'm Jay Saper. I'm a member leader of Jewish Voice for Peace in New York City. And I'm going to invite everybody to take those talking points that Morgan shared for having difficult conversations and use those as a basis for us to intervene in the media. It's so important for us to leverage our voices to challenge the media narrative that is out there. We need to make it very clear, as Morgan said, that Jews say stop the impending genocide against Palestinians. So we're going to share in the chat right now, in addition to the talking points, a guide to writing a letter to the editor. So as this action, we have two asks for you. Will you write a letter to the editor after this call to the New York Times? Will you write a letter to the editor to your local newspaper? If you're going to write a letter to the editor after you get off this call, can you share in the chat? Can you tell us if you'll write to the New York Times? Can you tell us if you'll write to your local paper? Just this morning, the Washington Post published a letter to the editor that I wrote. How did I get it in there? All of the tips are in the document that we have shared. I kept it personal, I kept it short, and I kept it timely. I responded right away to an article that I read that had glaring omissions. I made it clear why my voice was important, and I was able to clarify that Jews say that we want to stop the impending genocide of Palestinians, and that the root cause of violence is oppression. It's 75 years of occupation and apartheid. It's more important than ever for us to get these messages across, whether they publish our letter to the editor or not. Continuing to flood them with our perspective is encouraging the editors to consider and help to include more Palestinian narratives and more Jewish dissent to the calls for genocide against Palestinians in Gaza. So thank you so much for writing your letter to the editor. Again, if you haven't shared it in the chat, please do so now. Please let us know that you'll be committing after this call to following our helpful guide to writing a letter to the editor, to the New York Times, and to your local newspaper. Thank you. Thank you all so much for writing.
Thank you so much, Morgan and Jay. We needed every word you both shared with us. Yes, yes, yes. We are all going to go out and have those conversations. Thank you for the permission to not be perfect. We're just going to have them. And yes, Jay, that example of you getting that letter to the editor into the Washington Post today, that is exactly what we need. Every single one of us can do this right now. And I'm seeing that this waterfall in the chat of everyone saying, I will write a letter to the editor here in my local paper. This is it. To the New York Times, the Boston Globe. Yes, keep those commitments coming. They are everything right now. And remember, if yours doesn't get in, know that you helped get somebody else's letter to the editor in. It's only if they hear from 20 people saying the same thing that they're going to publish one. So no matter what happens, just like with calling Congress, it matters. I know how it feels. Trust me, it matters. We are nearing the end of our time, just have a little bit more. The Israeli government purports to represent all Jews. We know better. However, to effectively counter, we have to show just how many we are, and that means standing up and being counted and speaking out. So I want to make a very active invitation right now. If you are not an official current JVP member, please join us. You are wanted, you are needed, you are so welcome here. When you're a member, you're not isolated anymore. You're connected to this growing organization and this gorgeous movement that allows your power as one individual to be amplified. You do not need to be Jewish to join. You also do not need to sign any politics on a dotted line. If you know that what is happening is wrong, we welcome you with open arms. And now I want to ask, what is one commitment that each of us can make as we prepare to leave this gathering with each other? Many of you have already made commitments in the chat, but just take a moment to think about it and put your commitment in the chat as an act of accountability. Every single one of us, no matter how involved in this struggle we are, every single one of us is needed to step up and into our fullest power right now. We do not have the luxury of despair, of paralysis, of inaction. Someone said in the chat, this feels hopeless. I get it. I feel it. And we will act. We will act. At High Holidays this year, my wonderful anti-Zionist rabbi said, we do not need to wait to sort out our feelings to act. We just act. So that is what we are all here to do in this community right now. So place your commitment in the chat, a commitment to yourself to follow up, and then think about who are the 3 people you're going to invite to be here with you tomorrow. Who are 3 people who you've texted with this week about the horror? Those people. Doesn't matter if they're involved in this struggle or not. Text those 3 people and invite them to be here with you tomorrow. So now I want to invite you, think of those 3 people and put their initials in the chat or their names. This is how we grow a mass movement of opposition to weaponizing Jewish pain against Palestinians. This is how we stave off imminent genocide in our lifetimes right now. We grow this movement. So keep putting it in the chat. Who are the 3 people you're going to invite to be back here tomorrow with you? Same time, same place. This is the moment of our lives. Let's rise to meet the moment. And now we will pass it to Melissa Nussbaum-Freeman, Manager of Arts, Culture, and Ritual at JVP, to close us out.
This might be a moment. This might be the end of this half hour, but it is barely the beginning of the work that we have to do. So we have to stay centered and grounded. We have to stay strong in ourselves. We have to feel that we are united. So I'm going to invite you to just take a moment to feel your heartbeat. And take a breath into that heartbeat. Mine is fluttering. Feel your feet on the ground and feel how your head reaches up to the sky and how you are connected heavens to earth. And you are the conduit of all that energy. But you are not alone. I invite you to welcome in an ancestor, someone you knew. Maybe you didn't know them. Maybe it was just someone you heard was strong, that fought back, that stood up for their people. Call them in. They have your back. And when you're wavering, when there's a difficult conversation, when you have to call back because nobody answers, that ancestor is there and doubles, triples our force. And if you can't think of someone, no one comes to mind, we have the people's bubby. We love you, Schatzi Weisberger. You were here with us and you are still here with us. And she would say, get out there and fight. And she would say, I love you. Carry that in your heart. Carry that into your work. We'll be back tomorrow.
With spirit to guide us rise. In hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here. In a hope, in prayer, we're right here. In a hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here. In hope, in prayer, we're right here, and we rise. All of the children rise. Elders with wisdom rise. Ancestors surround us, rise.